Okay, other big differences. The web console. Okay, so the web console is something. Sometimes you'll hear it as cockpit, right? You'll hear it as cockpit because the service, right, the socket happens to be cockpit. The packages that provide the web console are cockpit packages. So what is this doing? What is this doing? Why do I care about the web console? Well, a lot of the servers that you're going to administer remotely, you're probably just SSHing into them. And I know, students that I would have in class, oftentimes there's a good chunk of them that were on Windows systems, right? Go figure, right? So they were on Windows systems, and they were using something like PuTTY as a way to SSH into the Linux servers that they were dealing with. The web console gives you the ability where you got a web browser, right? So I've got a web browser, and I can access details about a particular system. Now, some of this is, I think, kind of interesting in that a piece that was deprecated and is gone now, actually, in Red Hat Enterprise Linux 8 are all the System-Config Gui tools. Now, you may not have used those. I will tell you, in our Red Hat Enterprise Linux 6 class, this was a while ago, we did kind of, I don't know if it was an experiment, but we tried something different. In the System Administration 1 class, that class was geared more towards administrators who had a Windows-ish background, right, who are more comfortable using graphical tools. And so we introduced a lot of graphical tools for administration. In the System Administration 2 class, we focused on command line tools. And part of the problem with that approach was there happened to be a big overlap of topics. Okay, and in the RHEL8 classes, continuing into the Red Hat Enterprise Linux 8 classes, we didn't want to have a bunch of that overlap of content. But, what was interesting when I would teach those classes, I would have a lot of students who would come up to me and they'd say, Mike, this tool's pretty cool. This tool really helps do some of the administrative tasks that I'd like to be able to do. The problem is we don't have any GUI tools in our environment. So while it's great, I can't use it. So at any rate, our classes have really dropped those GUI tools, using them as part of our class concepts. But you get now the web console. And the web console can be used, and it has GUI components that are part of the web console, as opposed to being extra graphical components installed on the server itself. So I'm going to pull this up in a second. One of the things that you'll start seeing, right, is, let's say I'm going to drop off of the system and connect back into it. One of the things that you're likely to see, if a system has got the cockpit packages installed, and Red Hat Enterprise Linux 8 should, you get a message like this: hey, activate the web console using this command. Okay, so I'm going to activate it using that command. Keep in mind, systemctl, normally you want to both start and enable a particular service. Starting it right now, enabling it is the persistent piece, and you can do both in one step, enable -- now. So watch when I exit out, when I log back in, now it tells me, hey, here's how you can access the web console based on my host name, based on my IP address. So I'm going to go ahead and just copy this, and I'm going to pull up that. I'm going to go ahead and pull up the web console on server B. So https, serverb.lab.example.com, port 9090. All right, so I pull this up, and right now it's using a self-signed certificate. That's fine. So I pull this up, and initially, one of the things that struck me was, username and password, again, like you'd expect. If the user you're logging into has extra privileges, maybe they've got sudo privileges, they're part of the wheel group, you might go ahead and check this box. But you could also log in as the root user. And that was kind of, I wasn't crazy about that, right? I mean, if I think about SSH, one of the things that I would do with SSH is I might prevent the root user from logging in. And then I've got this where the root user can just log in right away. So, you can certainly change this. I started looking online, what are some of the different solutions people have come about with how they might solve that. I'm going to connect to root at server B, right? I still do have SSH access, open as root. But one of the things that you could do is you might actually go through and modify etc pam.d cockpit. Now, of course, yes, if you're modifying PAM, pluggable authentication modules, if you're modifying PAM, be careful with that. You can lock yourself out, including root. But one of the things I might add is I might add a new line to the auth different types of checks. I'm going to make it a requisite check, and I'm going to use the PAM succeed if module. And PAM succeed if, you can specify all different types of conditions. You know, when is this going to succeed? Keep in mind, in Red Hat Enterprise Linux 7, right, continuing with Red Hat Enterprise Linux 8, regular users started at the range of 1,000 and above. Right? In Red Hat Enterprise Linux 6 and below, it was 500. But you know, my users, they've got 1,000 is the start of the regular users. So I might say, hey, if it's above 1,000, that's okay. Now again, I can really fine tune this. Maybe there's a couple of users that I want, but I'm going to say if it's above 1,000, that's going to be fine. So if I come back over here, it's not kicking me out right now. I'm going to go ahead and log out and try to log back in as root. Guess what? It doesn't work anymore. Okay, so I've used one change to kind of have PAM secure this. I'm going to log in as user student, and student in our case happens to be a super user. So I'll log in as that user and take a look at some of the pieces related to Cockpit here. So some of the things that I'll find is you start getting graphical real-time information about performance. What's the CPU, memory, disk, network traffic, real-time information about that particular machine. Now, of course, I'm having to log into it like this, and that's fine. But I get the ability to do that. And then you can start seeing down this list some of the extra things I can do. So again, I'm not really going to demonstrate a bunch of this right now, but be aware, if I was dealing with firewalling, well, there's a firewall tool here. Now, in my opinion, it's not as sophisticated as using Firewall DE, but I could easily add or remove services if I needed to. From the networking side, I might set up different types of bridges, maybe bonded interfaces with the different NICs that are available to me. Again, you could do that from the command line, but you could also do it here. SE Linux related information. I could start taking a look at some of the SE Linux issues if I have them, and then looking at the logs for that. Speaking of logs, I can drill into my logs and I can start filtering. And maybe based on a particular day, the last 24 hours, the current boot, right? I can also filter for priority. What's the severity of the different messages here? So again, not that you can't do that by SSHing into the machine and doing it yourself, but it's kind of cool to be able to do that from here. Okay. So here's another piece. You can actually just pull up a terminal. So within this, I can pull up a terminal. I logged in as user student, so my prompt shows user student. Okay, so I've gone ahead and I've logged in directly to the web console on server B. But I'm going to close that up. But keep in mind, I'm going to log in over here. Now I'm on workstation. And some interesting things that you can start doing with the web console, you might say, not only do I want to see information about my machine, I want to see information about other machines as well. Now, in order to do this, right, you might have to go ahead and install some extra packages. So if I was to look on workstation, maybe I want to, let's exit out of this, do something like a yum list. I'm going to do it with sudo. Anything that has cockpit in the name. Up the -L. One more time. So what I'm going to see is that I'm going to have a handful of cockpit packages already installed. There's other ones available too. And so in particular, like this cockpit-dashboard, if I were to install that, it's going to give me the ability from one particular machine to essentially say, I want to jump off and see information about other machines as well. If I install cockpit-machines, right, this particular one, what it would do, I'd have to close up my web browser and open it back up again, but it would give me a virtual machine tab here, allowing me to install and view and run virtual machines through the web console. If I go ahead and install Cockpit-Composer, this is going to give me the ability to actually create new blueprints, right, and save those blueprints within the web console. So again, depends on which things you want to do. And again, there's the Performance Copilot, and you have the ability to record sessions and get documentation. I'm going to go ahead and install a couple of these packages. So I want to install the Composer and Machines. Now again, I'm not going to use these, but I want you to see some of the pieces that show up as a result of getting this installed. Now again, because it's going to affect my web browser, I'm going to have to close up my web browser, open it back up again to see these different changes. So I'll do that as soon as this finishes up. But again, as I think about it, it depends on how many machines you're managing, right? If you're managing a small subset of machines, being able to use something like this to essentially get real-time diagnostic information, pretty useful. I'm managing hundreds or thousands of machines. I'm probably not using this to view all those different types of machines. But in a small number, maybe this makes sense. So notice I've got an extra tab. Oh, it looks like I did Composer. I meant to do Dashboard. So I did Composer and Machines. I meant to do Dashboard as well. So I'll do Dashboard. But again, as that's installing, this piece over here, right? So if I wanted to, I could start building new images. Now, it's giving me an error here. There's an extra socket that you have to enable, right? So there's a Lorax Composer socket that once that gets enabled, it's able to start pulling this up. Here, this virtual machines wasn't here before, but it is now. Okay, so I might create new virtual machines. I can run my existing virtual machines to this. Again, these are just extra pieces that if you want to have, you can put them here. So I'm going to close this up. I was expecting a different tab here. Good thing about testing stuff, right? I'm in the process of, it's not just that I think it was done. I'm going to check and verify. And when I saw that it was not done, boy, I knew I made some kind of mistake. Not a big deal, right? So again, when this pulls up, I'm going to have a new tab there. Again, the idea is that from one web console, you can actually view the web consoles of other machines as well. Now, again, they have to have that cockpit socket running. So I've got this dashboard, and right now it's showing my machine. But I might add a different one. So maybe I want to go ahead and add serverb.lab.example.com. And so if I want to toggle over to looking at server B, I can toggle to looking over at server B. And I can always switch back to the workstation machine. And I can always use this dashboard to toggle between the two of them as well. Right? And so I'm seeing, blue happens to be the workstation machine, and green happens to be server B. This is kind of a nice comparison. I can do this for memory or network or whatever, right? So you've got some different ways that you can use this tool. I think it's a pretty cool tool. I do want you to be aware, though, that when I'm viewing the machine, like let's say I flip over and say I want to view server B. Just because I'm viewing the web console on server B, I don't see everything, right? So if server B also had a dashboard, or if server B also had an image builder, I don't get to see those components here. So I see the main piece, I can access any of these tabs, but I wouldn't be able to see these extra components. So anyway, this is the web console. You don't have to use it, right? But I think at least for some of this real-time performance and the ability to restart, to have the terminal window that's up here, I think that those are some pretty darn useful pieces. Anyway, something that you have in Red Hat Enterprise Linux 8.